So I don't know. We need to find out. Maybe we will do preliminary stuff first.
Yeah, we're just gonna do brief.
This year was on the instructions. Yeah.
There's like time for presentation and questions.
Do you want me to stay here or?
You are welcome to, if you'd like to sit until, yeah, you're welcome to. Have in the main table.
She does. Yeah.
Isn't she so cute?
Yeah. Yes. She's in third grade. Kindergarten.
Hey, Hannah, how many people are online? We have, let's see, we've got 12 folks online. And for those of you joining online, we're about to get started. If you do have an automatic or intentional notes reader, the AI notes readers, those are automatically disabled with Buncombe County's system. So, but this meeting is live streamed and recorded, and the recording is available from public input page afterwards. And so many ways to keep track of what happens here after the fact. And yeah, George, I know you're joining us virtually, and we've got Angie here in the room. Either one of y'all want to kick us off?
Sure, I'll go ahead. So welcome everyone. If you're here for JCPC, Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, a special session to talk about racial equity data, you are in the right place. So thank you. This is an open meeting for coming. So my name is Angie Garner, and I am chair of the planning committee for the JCPC, and which the planning committee, we review the assessments. That our role is to review the YASI assessments, the Youth Assessment Screening Instrument. Thank you, Lorraine. And basically, we help to set priorities for funding related to strengths and risks and needs with the youth that are served through DJJ, and how that relates to recidivism, which is quite important, and one of the reasons we're here to review this data. So I think that we'll, before we do any type of introductions with Crystal, we're gonna let her talk about herself and her background. But let's go around and just do some quick introductions with some folks that are here, and I'll start to my left.
It's good to see you all, and we're so glad that Crystal could come and join us today. Thank you, Ms. Lynn Lewis, for coming. My name is Lorraine Williams, and I'm the area consultant. I work for DPS, Juvenile Justice Community Programs, sort of a smaller section. Many people are familiar with court services. A lot of you all work with the court services staff in getting referrals directly through DJJ, and on community programs, we work more with the JCPCs and with the programs that you all choose to fund in each of your counties. I work with 9 counties here in the western area. So I'm glad to, and I get to come to the Buncombe meetings and hear all the great work y'all are doing. And I don't just say that to everyone, George.
Hi guys, my name is Jacqueline Zelaya. I work with UNIFIT, and then I work with their youth programs here in Buncombe County.
My name is Blanca, and I work as a community health worker for UNIFIT as well.
Norma Brown, Executive Director of UNIFIT.
And Hannah Ledgerton, Youth Justice Division Manager with Buncombe County Justice Services and primary staff support for the Buncombe JCPC. And also support the judges in the School Justice Partnership. So glad to have folks from both collaboratives here today.
I'm Victoria Riker, Behavioral Health Manager for Buncombe County.
Grover Hill, System of Care Family Partner with Via Health.
Jessica Biggs, System Care Coordinator with BioHealth and Buncombe County Child Collaborative.
Jeremy Bricker with Clearvita and Mental Health Rep on the JCPC board.
Meredith Presley, District Court Judge. Judge Dotson Smith will be here shortly.
I'm Susanna Knox. I'm an assistant public defender and I work in juvenile court here in Buncombe County.
Heather Welch, Buncombe County Sheriff's Office.
I'm Caleb Hunter with Buncombe County Sheriff's Office as well.
And we'll just do quick online. Hannah, if you don't mind calling out and George, you can introduce yourself last since you're the chair. But Hannah, will you call out folks' first name just to have it move quickly?
Sure. Let's see. We'll skip over George and grab this list a little bigger. Beth.
Beth Kraft, community member.
And I see Banta.
Banta Whitner, community member.
Deja.
Deja Cheney, I'm a fellow for Buncombe County's Manager's Office, JCPC member and intern for Buncombe Alternatives.
Dr. Furman.
Dr. Maggie Furman, Superintendent for Asheville City Schools.
Thank you for being here. Ty.
Ty, Program Director for Pivot Point. It's a JCPC program.
Let's see, Jamie Lee.
Hi, I'm Jamie Lee. I am with Buncombe Alternatives, and I'm the director for the Buncombe County Teen Court Program.
Julia Hodges.
Hi, I'm Julia Hodges, and I serve as the principal of IC Imagine.
Great, thanks for being here. Lavette Campbell. She just jumped on. Lavette, we're just doing brief introductions. If you're able to hear us.
There we go. Hi, my name is Lavette Campbell. I am the district coordinator for mental health and social workers with Asheville City Schools.
Thank you. Let me see. Everybody keeps moving around. Judge Merrill.
Hi, everyone. I'm Judge Merrill. I am mid-trial, so I'm just gonna listen and be with you as long as I can.
Thank you. We've got an iPhone user and a phone number. Either of you want to unmute and introduce yourselves?
Eric Robinson with Asheville Housing Authorities.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for being here. I'm not sure if the other phone caller would like to unmute, but please let us know who you are if you get a chance. And then we have a bunch more people just joined in the room. Commissioner Ball, do you want to?
Hey y'all, I'm Drew Ball with the Buncombe County Commission.
Susan Dotson Smith, Smitty, District Court Judge, and I got the note that I could bring my lunch, so I am meeting and I apologize ahead of time for everyone else. I did not bring enough.
So me, hi, Dr. No, Chief Equity and Human Rights Officer here for Buncombe County.
I'm Brendan Priester, DSR for Land Sky Regional Council and your Vice Chair.
And George.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry I'm not able to attend physically. Thank you, Crystal Wynn Lewis, for being present and for all of y'all to be present for this presentation we're about to have. George Redmond, the chair of the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council and Buncombe County Sheriff's Office representative.
Thank you. And I'll let Lorraine say something, but I just think it's really good for a presenter to know their audience and where they're from. So hopefully that was helpful. And I don't know, Lorraine, if you wanted to do an introduction or Crystal, you wanted to introduce yourself.
I'll just introduce myself so we can get started. So my name is Crystal Wynn Lewis. I'm the Racial and Ethnic Disparities Coordinator for Juvenile Justice. I've been working with juvenile justice and adult corrections for 31 years. I started out as a correctional officer and I moved through the ranks and became the superintendent in Culpeper, Virginia of a prison for 7 years. And then I came back to North Carolina to run Dillon for 7 years. And then I moved to Edgecombe Youth Development Center, and I was the director there as well. I got paroled to the central office, and I got this job that I find to be most rewarding as the Racial and Ethnic Disparities Coordinator. And today I want to tell you a little bit about why we do it and what the background is, and to also give you the latest data for Buncombe County. Because I had to rush and do FY25, because it just got off the press, you guys are the first ones that'll get the data. I'll have to look at the slides, but I'm going to just go quickly over the JJDPA, the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act, to explain why red is the core compliance requirement for Title II funding that we receive in North Carolina. The partnership we have with the federal government to comply with the core requirements, as well as compliance, and data is part of that compliance. I am not a statistician, so anybody who has questions related to the metrics on the data, I have that gentleman's name, Dr. Crozier's name, on a slide that y'all can copy down his information. And also if you have additional requests, because I try to stay within the boundaries of my job, which is the Racial and Ethnic Disparities for Juvenile Justice. So without any further, unless you have any questions, we can get started. Okay, sounds good. All right, so the clicker was working. Maybe not. All right, so. So I'm going to briefly go over racial and ethnic disparities as outlined in the JJDPA Act, the federal legislation that covers racial and ethnic disparities, and then we're going to look at FY25 red data. I do have the state's data, but we probably, by the time we get through, we just want to cover Buncombe County, and I wanted to go over some trends from the past 4 years, and that'll probably take up all of our time. And then I'll talk to you about how to use your red data to help with the JCPC and why it's important. We give this data out every year to the chiefs and also to the consultants. So at any time you can get this update from those parties, okay? So just a quick fact in North Carolina, and this is from the FY25 data. Youth of color make up 48% of the population in North Carolina, ages 6 through 17. But in FY25, 88% of the complaints are of youth of color, 86% of the complaints are for detention admissions are youth of color, and 82% of the YDC admissions are youth of color. Black youth specifically only make up 24% of the youth population in the state, ages 6 through 17. But in FY25, the latest data, there are 64% of the complaints that came through. There's 71% of the detention admissions in the state, and there's 72% of the commitments to YDCs. So when we talk about why we do this, that is a quick snapshot. So what is red? So according to 34 USC 1103 section 41, this is what the legislation says and reads: racial and ethnic disparities is defined by the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act. It's minority youth populations involved at decision points in the juvenile justice system at disproportionately higher rates than non-minority youth at that same decision point. That is what the verbiage is. The JJDPA Act. And the reason this is important is this is the first piece of legislation, federal legislation, that was enacted in '74 to cover juveniles. This is probably the most comprehensive legislation. Everything you're doing, everything that we do with children really comes, or the origin is from the JJDPA Act. It was the first piece of legislation. It probably still is the most comprehensive. It provides funds to the states for delinquency prevention, but it does outline specifically the care for juveniles, whether they're confined in the community, what we're supposed to provide them. It also established OJJDP. We're very familiar with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. That's where all the state federal grants come out of. That office was created under the JJDPA Act. It's voluntary, the partnerships, most of the states all participate because of the money, the Title II money that comes. And some of these programs that we have in place in North Carolina, you are funded through Title II grant money that you apply through the Governor's Crime Commission. But there are 4 core protections of the JJDPA Act, and we're only focusing on one, which is racial and ethnic disparities. So those 4 core protections, and I'm going to just put all 4 of them out here, is deinstitutionalization of status offenders. Those are those kids that commit offenses that are not crimes as adults. We don't want them incarcerated or locked up in any facility. That's one of the core requirements under the JJDPA Act. Sight and sound separation and removal from adult jails go hand in hand. There shouldn't be any child locked up with an adult offender, whether it's a detention center, a jail, a prison. Part of the mandatory requirements is that we remove and separate, which is why juvenile justice has so many detention centers, because those are where the kids that are under 17 and under that were housed. They're housed at those particular facilities when they're arrested. And last but not least, back in 1992, it was disproportionate minority confinement. You guys used to hear DMC all the time. DMC. Now it's RED. As of 2018, it changed to racial and ethnic disparities. And that is the focus of this presentation. So it did go through different evolutions. It used to be racial and ethnic, disproportionate minority confinement because there was overrepresentation of juveniles in the facilities, the long-term lockup facilities. Then it changed over to disproportionate minority contact because at some point in time, they did an evaluation and realized that all the contacts that juveniles were having, youth of color were disproportionately present in all of those contact points. And we'll see those contact points shortly. In 2002, it became a core protection with the JJDPA Act. And then under this current administration in 2012, it changed to racial and ethnic disparities. That was under the Juvenile Justice Reform Act of 2018, the JJRA, a nonpartisan legislation that was approved. And just to be clear, this legislation that came December 21st, 2018 was the first time in 16 years that this legislation was reauthorized. And so the significance of it is that it updated not just changing racial and ethnic disparities to make us more compliant, it also made significant amendments to the issues with children and the significant developments with brain science and things of that nature, where we can expand the usage of Title II monies for the older offenders and for female offenders. There was some additional verbiage put in that legislation to help address that population. Specifically as it relates to racial and ethnic disparities, it's the term used and commonly used across the state. We know the Hispanic population is the only ethnicity acknowledged in this country, and that word was not utilized in the original JJDPA Act. It was race. And so in 2018, it was changed to racial and ethnic disparities, RED, and we stopped using disproportionate minority contact. It also gave us clear expectations on what we're supposed to do as it relates to racial and ethnic disparities, policy, practice, and system improvement aimed at identifying and reducing. In the past, we just had to send in the data to the federal government and just do an evaluation every 7 years. Now they do want you in the plan that we submit on an annual basis to tell us how you're going to reduce disparities across the state. What are you going to do? It's not just to give us the information and forget about it. You get the information and you actually are going to do something to reduce it. And the JJRA, the Juvenile Justice Reform Act, was fully funded at a very large capacity for the first time in 16 years. And I say that is because when you can get legislation passed that's going to help kids, especially kids in the juvenile justice system, there's an agreement that we should be addressing it and we should be utilizing our tax dollars for addressing that population that you're actually serving so they can get the services. And it also provides each of you opportunities to bring forth programs that are effective for this particular population. So state compliance is pretty simple. We have to identify through data the disparities across the state. We do data for every county in North Carolina and distribute that data to each of our districts. But we have to develop a 3-year red plan that tells us how we're going to reduce it. And we use that data to determine how we're going to reduce the disparities in the juvenile justice system. And then every 6 to 7 years, they require the state to have an outcome-based evaluation. All of the work and all of this effort is for Title II formula grants. All of the compliance, all the requirements under that legislation is so that the states can get funding for programs and services for juveniles in the juvenile justice system. So that's it, quick, fast, and hurry. There's actually a lot more involved. This is usually a 2-hour training for our staff to go over JJDPA Act, but that's just a quick overview of why we do what we do, why we are monitoring the disparities. It's because it's not just federally required by our legislation and our current administration, but it's also the right thing to do when there's an issue in our system and we have resources that we want to make sure are adequately dispersed.
May I hear 2 quick things in? I want to welcome our Chief District Court Judge Ward Scott.
Hello.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And then also just say, we are scheduled till 2. We do have the room for a little longer because when Lewis does have to hit the road between around 2:30, but we have the room for a little after 2 if folks who can stay have some extra questions.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about compliance with the Red Core requirement. And this is strictly, we're just going over the data. The decision points, we used to have 9 decision points that we reported on data, and North Carolina still collects data on the adjudications and the other decision points that we no longer have to supply to the federal government. But what we track and what we have to submit on an annual basis are the complaints that come in from every county in each district, the complaints that are not approved, and not approved could be diverted, closed, or just not approved because of legal insufficiency. The kids placed in detention, the YDC placement, and the number of kids that are placed in, that are transferred to adult court. Those are the 5 contact points. And one of the things under this current administration that they put in place before, we used to hear RRI, relative rate index. We don't do the relative rate index any longer. It's what we have to submit, and what the administration wants us to submit is simply the volume, the actual raw numbers, and the percentages, and that's all we submit on an annual basis. So we're getting ready to get into Buncombe County.
I'm sorry, would you just say that term again for me, relative?
The relative rate index, RRI. Relative rate index used to be the way that the data was submitted
Thank you.
prior to 2018. Okay, so defining the problem here in Buncombe County, and from the last time, I think we did a virtual was back in 23, 24, maybe 22, it was like 3 or 4 years ago, that I wasn't here, and I was determined to come this time, so we wouldn't have any technical difficulties. So the latest census is the 2023 US Census Report. And Buncombe County has 33,606 youth ages 6 through 17. Of that population, 73% are white, 9% are Black, 16% are Hispanic, 2% are Asian, and less than 0.5% Native American. And that is the breakdown for youth ages 6 through 17. Delinquent complaints. The good news is for FY25, Buncombe County only had 277 complaints filed. And you guys should be extremely happy because last year, FY24, you had 650. So the decrease is significant. So the work is being done clearly between court services and these folks in this room. The breakdown of those complaints, 49% were on Black youth, 14% on Hispanic youth, multiracial youth represented 8%, and white youth were 29% of those complaints. And so when we talk about disparities, as you can see, when you look at the population versus the complaints, you can see the distinction between the two. We're almost half of the complaints. Youth of color, Black youth in particular, represent almost half of them, and they're only 9% of the population in Buncombe County. The number of juveniles actually involved in those complaints were only 132. So although you had 277 complaints, only 132 kids were involved. Now that's good news when you have over 33,000 kids ages 6 through 17 in your county, that you only had 132 that came through the juvenile justice system. The breakdown, 38% were white, 43% Black, Hispanic were 14%, and multi-race was 5%. And again, with the population, you can see how the disparities exist. The good news is that, and this is one of the reasons why legislation requires us now just to send the volume and the percentages, because if you just send the percentages or the RRI, it does inflate it and really bring alarming, it alarms anyone when you hear that information. But when you actually see the numbers, and Buncombe County is a good example of why it's important to show the numbers, is because you see that it's a relatively small number. And so the work that's being done, whether it's through school justice partnerships, the work that's being done between the judges and schools and the court services section and the programs being provided in the community, that's why that number is that low. The breakdown for male and female, 29% were female, 71% male, and that's the actual volume, the number, 38 were girls, 94 were males. And it's important because as your number changes, we've seen a peak in the number of females having contact with the system. So it's important that you make sure there's services available for females in your communities. So let's look at the cases not approved, diverted, closed by race and ethnicity. I'm gonna go on and put all of them up here. 33% of those 277 complaints were not approved. You had 91 complaints not approved out of the total 277. White youth had 43% of their complaints not approved. Black youth had 36% of their complaints not approved. Hispanic youth had 31% of their complaints not approved. And multi-race, 28% of their complaints not approved. And as you can see in the blue, that's the number of complaints each race or ethnicity received, and in the green are the numbers that were not approved at intake. So 33% is slightly lower, higher than what you had last year, but last year you had 650 complaints that came through. So again, it's important to see the actual volume. Detention placement, y'all had 59 kids placed in detention. 14% white, 63% Black, 17% Hispanic, and 7% other. And you can see the actual volume beside each of the 3 races and ethnicities. Anytime we have any numbers under 5, we will not identify that race or ethnicity because of the confidentiality of the juvenile. YDC confinement and transfers, you only had 2 kids placed in YDCs all year. 2 kids. And you only had 1 transfer to adult court. And that's FY25 data. So guys, y'all doing a great job. From the previous year, this is outstanding. Let's look at your school-based complaints. Y'all had 95 of these complaints come from the school system, which is about 34% of the complaints received. White youth were 36%, Black youth 44%, 16% Hispanic, 4% other races, and those are the actual numbers.
So all of the other complaints would not have been SRO or school driven?
Right.
That's interesting for our community.
And for the school-based complaints, there were 95 complaints, but only 70 youth involved in those 95 complaints. These were your top 10 school-based complaints. Now, I just put this in moments before this meeting because it got to me late. And I do also have the past 3 years, but I didn't have enough time because we put this request in at the last minute and they were able to give us at least the top 10. But your top 10 were simple assault, assault on a government official, and you see the numbers beside it. Possession of a weapon other than firearms and explosive on school grounds, disorderly conduct by engaging in fighting or violent conduct or creating a threat of imminent fighting or violence, communicating threats, resisting a public officer, assault inflicting serious injury, possession with intent to manufacture, sell, or deliver, Schedule 6 controlled substance, communicating a threat of mass violence, and lastly, consume any alcohol beverage less than 21 years. Those were your top 10. So let's look at your offense class, because a lot of times you hear, well, they commit more crimes, they're more violent. Volume-wise, yes, in the number, but in terms of the ratios between the races, it really isn't much difference. Y'all had 277 complaints. Only 8% were violent. And the majority, only 2 were Class A's. The rest were D and E felonies. 27% were serious complaints. And serious is only F through I felonies and A1 misdemeanors. We know violent offenses, and you may not know this, so I should have said that at the beginning. A through E are violent offenses. That's how we classify violent offenses in juvenile justice. You had 23. Serious offenses, you had 76, which was 27%, but the majority of the complaints that came through were minor. And minor complaints are Class 1, 2, and 3 misdemeanors. And that's the population that we think could be better served in the community, even though they came through the juvenile justice system, which is a much lower number than just last year. It's just incredible on the difference. But 178 youth were involved, complaints were minor, which is 64%. So the majority of your complaints that are coming through are minor complaints. Your violent complaints, and even in the number, it's only 8%, the single digits, and it's consistent with the statewide data. Violent complaints, y'all about the same. They may be a pinch lower, but violent complaints are still, even with raised the age in place, still remain in the single digits.
Are those the 16, 17-year-olds, the A through E?
Yes, yes, the A through E. This includes the 16 and 17-year-olds. That before December 1st, of course. So let's look at it through the races. For white youth, they didn't have any violent offenses, the A through E. White youth had 22% of their complaints that were serious, but the majority, 77.5, were minor. A1, 2, and 3 misdemeanors. Black youth, 13%, and 13% of 136 were violent. 27% were serious, F through I, A1 misdemeanor, and 60% were minor. The Hispanic population had 39, 31% were serious, and 69% were minor. Other races, because of the low number, we won't give the specific race, but 22, they had a total of 22, and 23% were violent, 45% serious, and 32% were minor. So it's important that you look at not just the percentages, but also the numbers. Because when we look at Black youth, that only represents 8 youth involved in those 13% complaint, only 8. And 2 were Class A, the rest were D offenses. Any questions about that? So I also took time to let y'all look at the past 4 years, and this is just so you can see the difference, because I told Sylvia, this is just incredible on the work that's being done with the schools, but also retaining the kids in the community without going into the juvenile justice system. You could see it because you had 650, even though the number of kids were higher, the number continues to go down because we're talking about 136 kids that were involved for the whole year. And so the schools are now utilizing our SROs for what they were there to begin with, and that is to protect us from gun violence and illegal substances coming in. They're not there to deal with adolescent behavior. They're officers. And unfortunately, we've been using them a lot to handle things we used to handle when we were in school.
I just wanted to ask a real quick question. If there is any other legislation that coordinates with this for recognized federal tribes, or are they just put under the other and there's not something that has to overlap like if we were?
It does have, no, it is recognized, and it's recognized out, if the numbers are under 5, we cannot disclose them.
Okay.
And because you might know, if it's just one kid, you might know them, and so we can't disclose the confidentiality of the child. But yes, the American Indian population, there's additional, I put in the ones with the volume that we can present, and the rest are called in the other races.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So let's look at school-based offenses. The trends by volume, because you're gonna see it both ways. When you look at white youth, you start out, the red on down is, we're doing from FY22 to FY25. You see, you started out with 174 kids involved in school-based complaints back in 2022. You went down to 148 and 23. You only had 83 white youth in FY24, and then FY25 you had 34. When you look at Black youth, same thing. You had 141 kids involved in school-based complaints that were Black. In 2022, FY23, you only had 118, FY24, 72, and FY25, current year data, 41 Black youth. When we look at the Hispanic population, same thing. 58 back in 2022, and in 2025, you only had 15. And other races combined, they were not in 24 or 25 data, but in 2022, you had 28 and 21 and 2023. So just in that short period of time, you could see how high you were and how low you've come, just in 4 years. From the work that's being done. When we continue, and this is important because when we talk about disparities, you know, somebody said, what's the problem? The problem is if you have money available or you don't have money and you're looking at how best to utilize your dollars, you don't want to put it on programs that seem to not be needed. You need to look at what's available, what population you need to serve. When we look at FY22 and you look at the different categories here, white youth were 43%, Black youth 35%, Hispanic youth 14%, and other races 7%. That was in FY22. In FY23, you see similar dynamics: 43% white, 35% Black, 16% Hispanic, 6% other races. FY24, same thing, 46% white, 40% Black, 11% Hispanic. And then FY25, you saw an increase in the Black youth having the higher percentage. In FY 25, 36% were white, 43% Black, and 16% Hispanic. So what the trends by percentage should tell you is that there is still a disparity when Black youth only represent 9%. The work's being done, but now you got a workable number because you got little numbers. You got baby numbers for the whole county to work on, and you have a bunch of programs available. So why not we look at evidence-based programs and we fund evidence-based programs. That's a given. But are these the right evidence-based programs for this population? And that's the questions for you guys, the experts. Are those the right programs? Are those programs actually doing the job that we expect? As a taxpayer, I want money being used on the purpose. And if it's to deal with juveniles and help them stay out the system, then that's what we should use it for. The disparities is something that shouldn't just happen. We should make a concerted effort to actually address it and find out what we can put in place. Clearly, you're doing the work. Clearly, the numbers have been reduced, but someone's recognizing that, hey, we can take care of these kids in the communities and not bring them in the juvenile justice system, because if we don't see them, they're not in the numbers. And that's clear for FY 25 data. When we look at distinct juvenile volume, same thing. Sorry. When we look at white youth started out at 147 back in FY 22. The previous one were complaints. Now we're actually looking at the actual body of the distinct juvenile, okay? You had 147 kids involved in FY 22. In FY 25, there were 50 total. FY 22 for Black youth, you had 125 youth involved, Black youth involved, 95 in FY 23, 65 in FY 24, and then 57 in FY 25. When we look at the Hispanic, you had 43 back in FY 22, and to date, there was only 19 youth involved. So as you can see the trends for the past 4 years, they're continuing to go down. Because of the low number, the multi-race youth, we didn't identify those numbers because they were under 5. But you can see what I'm trying to point out here, the trends is that you can see the numbers continuing to go down. The disparities, yes, they exist, and you have something to work on. You have something to think about when you're talking about how to fund programs and what programs to fund. But the importance is that you got a workable number, and the majority of your kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and in school as well. By percentage, again, you're gonna see the same thing with the disparities as you saw with the actual complaints. The actual difference is still the same across the board. With FY 25 was the first year Black youth actually were the largest represented in the number of kids involved in the juvenile justice system. So you see where your issues are. With this data, you can clearly see that there's a focus, a very small one because the numbers are really good, but what can you put in place and what kind of programs can address these kids? And that's through conversations with the chief, your judges, to find out what kind of offenses you're getting, what kind of programs are out there. We know evidence-based programs, they've monetized it such that you can get those programs funded. And there could be some other programs out there. We try to research out. We know mentorships, #1 for youth of color, and particularly Black boys, that are effective programs. So do you have those in your toolbox? Programs that can address those particular kids that can help them stay away from the system, because once they leave juvenile justice, that's it. That's it. 4-year trends for complaints. I think I went them right here. So this slide is duplicated, and I apologize, we have a duplicated slide here. Y'all already seen it. So how to use your red dollars. So when we talk about how to use the red data, especially for JCPCs, we want to make sure that you're sharing this information with law enforcement, judges, community leaders, decision makers, so they can understand exactly what we are talking about with racial and ethnic disparities, to make sure that you actually know see what's happening in your community, because you can't just make decisions. You know, for example, if you put a gun buyback program at Walmart, bring your guns in, we give $250, when you got an opioid crisis in your neighborhood, why would you do that instead of investing in some treatment? So having the data, you get an idea of what your concerns are as it relates to the numbers, but you can do a deeper dive to get specific information on the types of offenses. The judges knows them, the court service folks knows those, because you see those referrals, you're supposed to be talking about those at JCPC meetings, what kind of cases are coming in, what services are needed. Discuss with the JCPCs the data so it can help in your annual planning with your resources, especially if you have limited resources. A lot of people don't realize some of your programs are being funded by Title II money that we receive by being in compliance with the JJDPA Act. Examine your resources on hand and determine how to distribute them to ensure that all youth have same access to opportunities. One of the things I hear all the time around here is transportation, or don't have enough substance abuse treatment. You know, education, we're past education. It's treatment now, and the kids need treatment. You can educate all day long, but that's not helping. They need treatment. Do you have those services? Can they get to those services? Are they in the communities where these kids are? Those are the kinds of conversations, and this is how the data gets the conversation started. Talk to law enforcement, share the data, ask them what their policies are as far as diverting. Obviously, there's a good relationship with law enforcement here in Buncombe County, because you can clearly see that the SROs are not being utilized to handle adolescent complaints. The community programs are being utilized because the majority of the kids that are coming through the system this time didn't come from the schools. And it did at one point, you guys know that. Ask those families what they need. Families in crisis can't get on a wait list or a referral list to get assessed. If they're in crisis, usually that means I need help now. You know, they can't wait. That child needs help now. That parent needs help now. And so ask them, what is it that they need? What can help make their lives better and help this child change the direction they're headed? And they have to be at the table at these meetings to share that information. So now we got any questions?
I have one.
Yes.
This will be the first of many, I'm sure, but I have been really interested in what you might know on programs that pertain to peer group building, because I query whether the group of folks who are together may trigger higher numbers. And I don't know what community evidence-based programs really sinks their teeth into understanding the community connections those children are having and how we can better track them into a diversion that doesn't show up that they come back for revenge or as a victim or as a witness, or, you know, that their connectivity to other issues, I think, causes a potential increase in numbers.
Absolutely. Now, to answer your question, for me, no, I don't.
Okay.
Lorraine's section, community programs. And one of the things, now I do go out and research nationally programs that have shown promise, and I report it back to the department. We did some work with UNC Chapel Hill with their grad students to search out programs specifically for youth of color and to see what was available. California had some programs in place that actually did work for kids of color, particularly Black kids, and it involved mentoring. There's not a whole lot, unfortunately. So you have to take a piece of each program and maybe put something together. It seems to be what everyone's doing, but we do take time to research out programs, and people who have programs have to go through a serious vetting protocol with community programs to become providers. So Lorraine, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I would just, and I want to make sure I've understood your question, but you're asking about like peer group building, how they would say a little bit more.
I think that historically there have been times that when our juveniles come through the system, no matter, I would say, their ethnicity, they are very connected to other juveniles who come through the system. In a legal term, they may be co-defendants, or they may be a witness, or they may be somehow tangentially related, right? And I think that that increases their potential risk for involvement, and I query what is it that we could address or do to help better support sort of the folks who are tangentially involved with someone who's coming into the system. I'm not sure if I think we've addressed that, and I don't know if I think a JCPC program has the authority to do so, but I think a community program might be allowed to take it a little to the next step. So when we talk about school justice partnership and JCPC, this community piece, the complaints are coming through the community, tells me that we have a potential resource there on how to address those connectivity lines. And I think we need to look at that as a community to try to better understand how to support people who have been around others who are into the system.
Yeah.
Peer group dynamics.
Right.
We see that a lot.
Yeah, when we're doing the planning, we're looking at the Yazzie data, the assessments for the youth coming through court services. You know, the pro-social peer influence versus the negative peer influence. That's one indicator we kind of look at that we see in their responses. In their, you know, collectively, we get some information and we know that that's a big factor. I can speak probably more the JCPC programs, and like, as you all know from your allocations process, oftentimes you'll have a program that has a certain name or a certain role, but within each of the JCPC programs that you probably have some elements of that positive peer support, as well as the adult mentoring.
Well, and it speaks to programs that do both JCPC fund and other funding, because then they can make that connection in a way that maybe is helpful.
Yeah, I will say with the community-based public health response to violence work, one of the ultimate goals around that is building community cohesion, and with the aim of that being linked to violence prevention, and so both through youth leadership development and mentoring and community health and case management. So definitely a part of some of the work that's happening in our community as well. Regina Herring did join us, our Justice Services Director, and she put a question into the chat. Are there any specific indicators that identify the drivers of these reduction in numbers, and what things were put in place that could have impacted these numbers?
Well, offhand, there's probably several things. We all know the School Justice Partnership probably is top of the list. Having that in place has really helped. And of course, obviously, law enforcement working with each of you to better serve the children. Specifically, in terms of the reduction in numbers, we just got the data last week. And believe me, I feverishly, and I'm sure I got a mistake somewhere, hustle to make sure you guys got hot off the press the latest numbers. And I'm glad I did, because I know the last time I came, it wasn't really happy situation. And just in 4 years, the work that's been done is incredible. And it should serve as an example that sticking together and working together, you can make it happen in a little bit of time, because you have. But that's statewide, the school justice partnerships across the state has really, you can see the impact in the schools. Our numbers are getting much lower. The schools, we hope, are finally getting the message about why our resource officers are there, and remembering that they're cops, they're law enforcement folks, and start taking care of some of these issues with our kids. But I can pose that question, and Lorraine, of course, she's gonna take notes as well on questions that she knows. I try to stay within my area. But there's probably several things that's contributed to it, but we know one of them for sure. And the hard work of the judges and the hard work of the court services
Community,
folks.
everybody.
Exactly,
pitches in.
and definitely law enforcement.
We are a community.
We are a community. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there any, is the data broken down by which complaints on the front end are law enforcement driven versus driven by, you know, a citizen like an alleged victim? Is that?
Now, I don't have that now, and probably it's gonna be pretty difficult to get that information, but yes, North Carolina is one of the few states that actually has one system, NC Joint, that has all of the juvenile justice data. So every component is obviously in the system where it can be calculated and utilized for research. The parameters on how much and what you can get are limited, but I think I did include Dr. Crozier's. I did. This is the man with the plan. I love him. Dr. Crozier is in charge of the research and data section. And what we normally do, we can put in a request, even outside of bread data, you can put in a request for something specific. And it also can take away the race and ethnicity and give you the numbers, if that's what you're truly just looking for.
I would be interested in both. I see some cases coming out of schools that, and sometimes where specifically I know that an SRO declined to, you know, refer to court. But a parent of an alleged victim, you know, pursued a prosecution. And that seems to, I mean, in my totally anecdotal experience, only happen to Black children, sometimes alarmingly young ones. So I just, yeah, curious if we had numbers of that.
We probably do, but remember that the families, those people have the right to press those charges, even if law enforcement doesn't want to. Any other questions from anyone? Yes, sir.
This may be something we can't answer because we don't have the data, but I'm excited to see the drop. It's really wonderful. I'm curious if any of that is related to Helene and the time that kids spend out of school. And are just, or society not even functioning there for a few months.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I did this whole region during that time period, and Lorraine can tell you, I did all the districts out here. Even when that fire was burning, I had to go to that courthouse to do some training. So I can tell you, we were working. But I'm sure that's a good question, and they can probably get that information. I don't know. I wouldn't have that information, but I guess that would, a deeper dive would be needed to find that out. But you guys are swinging back really good. I'm looking around and it's looking really great around. So.
Can we ask for the breakdown by school, or the number's gonna be too small at that point that you can't release?
Well, I don't know if the numbers are gonna be broken down, too small. Well, they are gonna be small, but they do have the schools too. And I think that is important probably in data requests to get that if you need to throw those resources over to those areas that you're having more difficulty. Some areas don't have it, but in the western part of the state. And one thing y'all should notice that the population, Hispanic population in this area, and really the whole western area has increased significantly. So when we talk about resources and having resources available, you know, you look at everything, the population too. What are the needs of the kids that are coming and living in these communities? But they do have the schools too. So it's available. Now, you probably can get access to it, but it is important to know, just in terms of resources. Yes, ma'am.
Well, something that I wondered about that, like I have looked at, you know, like we have more and more, there are more public facing websites, you know, that juvenile justice have and that DPS has and that the Department of Public Instruction also have. And I noticed they've got some similar, like we have the school-based offenses, you know, that you can go and play with the data for Buncombe or for the West or for all the counties are in there and look at some of the pieces we just did, and it's interactive. And the schools have some data websites too, but the thing I don't know is if you're looking for a breakdown like that, do you know, would that come more from the schools themselves? Is that data that would come from the schools more than from DJJ?
Well, the school's data is not gonna involve criminal acts, so it'd probably be DJJ. But the school does keep stats on those offenses that don't make it to or rise to the level of involvement in law enforcement or juvenile justice. But you can, for the ones that are coming through your courtroom or the complaints coming through Buncombe County's courts, juvenile justice would be able to help with that. But the school definitely has a database too. We have an open public-based school justice partnership database that's on the website, and you can look at specifically every county. And they're pretty live, they're pretty up to date on the numbers. They keep updating that on a regular basis. So you have access to some data, but I put Dr. Crozier up here because sometimes he gets nervous if, you know, something that's not supposed to be out gets out, and he likes to kind of vet those first.
I have two questions. The first one is, and you might have mentioned this, I think maybe you did, what I guess is defined by not approved. So you said a complaint comes in, what does that actually mean if it's not approved?
So it might not meet legal sufficiency. The court counselor may just not approve it because it didn't meet legal sufficiency. And there are guidelines in our general statute to determine, you know, and they're trained on how to do that. The other is the complaint might be closed on arrival for whatever reason. And then the ones that we love to hear about are those who are diverted. That means they didn't have contact with the juvenile justice system. I'll give you a good example, the diversion program at Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department. We don't see those kids in our numbers. They're not in our numbers, and they have a really good diversion program and a really good, very, very high success rate. And that's a program that's funded through Title II monies and DJJ. So I say that to say that there are programs out there, even though the kids never come to juvenile justice and are not supervised, but we're still helping to fund those types of programs, and they are out there.
Awesome. Thank you. And then my second question was, what are and where are the descriptors for violent offense versus a serious offense versus a minor? Like, where could I go and read, these are the things that make up violent versus serious versus minor?
Well, I already gave you the cheat sheet. That was the A through E felonies.
Okay.
And so all you have to do on any website, put North Carolina General Statute A through E, and there you go, the list comes down.
Thank you.
So did you say that that was categorized for juvenile purposes versus the whole state?
Well, no, it's only for juveniles, violent, serious, and minor. And they're categorized, the serious, and let's see if I can bring that slide back up, are the A through E's, felonies. Let's see.
So then is it 7B that's categorizing it?
I think it's 7B, and I think it's, what is it, chapter 14 for all the crimes.
So the juvenile part of the code is the
juvenile part of it,
yeah.
So the class A through E felonies are violent, serious, the F through I felonies, and the A1 misdemeanors. And then the minor is the class, the 1, 2, and 3 misdemeanors, okay?
Right, and those are terms of art. You should put no significance on them in any way, shape, or form, because a minor offense, which is a class 1 misdemeanor, may be violent, right? So they're just terms of art. So you shouldn't look at it as these are a classification of violence.
You may read something that says, why did they say that's this?
Like
It's
there's
because
a
there's a
drug
system.
trafficking offense that's considered violent because it's a class A through E felony, but then there's assaults that are misdemeanors, so they could be considered minor. So it's not like a what you would intuitively think is violent necessarily. Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, these are the guys that would know those things better than, way better than I.
Right, and these are type of things we don't even think about. We just already know that that's the classification. We assign no special significance to it. right? Because that's the classification, it's always been the classification. But if I slowed down for a second, I thought to myself, I would think that those are just violent things. No, right? The colloquial phrase violence or dictionary phrase violence, it has nothing to do with these classes. So it's just the way it is. So you shouldn't look at it as, if it's not A through E, then it's nonviolent, right? You would think logically that's what it would be, but it is not in any way, shape, or form.
No, that's very helpful.
One question. Just building on what you expressed, we work with a community health workers model for everything we do, and we have found that delivering this type of data, obviously in a more easier digestible way to parents, has a great impact, that they know what is reality they are facing, youth, or the risk they're facing is also an amazing tool for prevention. But there is a program that exists in place that we can create these spaces for parents and families. Obviously, with youth, we have the conversations about consequences and risk, but I can see the reaction to parents over the years to data when obviously they can relate in somehow with popular education tools. Sometimes we think that, oh, we cannot share some of these things because they might not understand or because you need a master to process some of it. But no, families are receptive to data. It's just how we present it to them. So it comes to your mind, some type of program that already has succeeded doing that, or?
Honestly, no, but I've done for communities like in Raleigh, Wake County, just for social groups that organize that want to know about the data. And we try to tailor it to the audience so they can understand, not too much, because it can get overwhelming. But you want to have both the bright side as well as just not just looking at the data because it could be a little depressing. Focus, the reason we give it to every single court service folk, chief and every consultant, is so that they could, especially when they're dealing with the community programs, they can share it with the families, and they can have conversations if they're interested. But in terms of an actual forum, I don't have a problem, and I don't think anyone would, sharing it with the community that's interested and wants to do something about it.
And I think that's an excellent addition to the school justice partnership, to think about that educational piece for the community. And so that's something you might put on an agenda too. Thank you.
Got a question?
You, sir.
Well, I loved all the data and the pie charts and all of that stuff and everything, broke it down for me so I can get a clear view, vision of what's needed in our community, what's working. But I'm a little bit disappointed with the lack of the organizations that are not here that work with our youth so that they can see these numbers and they can see what's working and how JCPC and the others are trying to work in helping the youth in the community so that they can see it and they can see what's working and they can add to their models and everything. I just wish they were here to hear this today, you know. Maybe.
Well, and we'd be able to share, once you've got a chance to breathe and make sure it feels good, because I really appreciate, and I know how much you rushed to get the 25. I'm sitting here with my 24 ready to go, because I was like, you can't do it. So thank you. I mean, huge kudos. That was a big lift that people may not understand.
Hannah put the fire on me. She emailed me all the time.
Well, I am so grateful for that, and grateful for Hannah all the time with us. But it seems like we could put the PowerPoint in a method that could be emailed then to any of our providing organizations initially and then maybe decide who else should get them. I don't think there'd be a restriction for that I can think of.
There isn't one, and Lorraine and I already talked about it today. We're gonna email it to Hannah and she can distribute it. We just always have to go through verification, Dr. Crozier's section, so he can make sure everything, double check everything. They've already presented the data, and sometimes we give it out, but we know one person's not perfect, so we have to go through research to let them vet it, and I told, probably Wednesday, I can get it back. Yes, sir.
It'll both go out to folks who were here and, you know, on these lists, but also it'll be posted on the Buncombe County public input page along with this recording. And just to build on, you know, what you were saying, I think that Crystal's team and DJJ tries to provide this opportunity to have a really thoroughly informed discussion when sharing this data. And so it's absolutely wonderful to have you here to help facilitate this. And then once we have this, then we are able to really use this data as a community to dig deeper into it and to share it more widely. So, so this is kind of the first piece of getting the red data on an annual basis, is really being able to have Ms. Lewis here with us to dig deeper.
It's my job, if y'all need me, some whispering that. That's what I'm supposed to do. Yes, sir.
Don't we have like 15 other people?
Oh, yes, there are,
Sorry. It seems like there's 15 other people here that are in attendance through the Zoom.
Yeah.
Am I wrong in that?
Yeah, they were announced, I think, early, but I don't know if I see any more questions in the chat. I think Hannah's been monitoring the questions. There may be more.
but if there is anyone, you know, on the Zoom who, you know, wants to take this opportunity to unmute and ask any questions or share any thoughts, please do.
Folks, I've got an emergency custody that I have to attend to right now. I've been texting away. I apologize for that. I cannot support Judge Dotson Smith enough in this endeavor, and Judge Presley, and every judge in Buncombe County. Thank you, Judge Dotson Smith, for keeping me out of trouble.
I can't do it all the time, but I try.
I know, and it's a full-time job. I appreciate that.
Judge Merrill is listening for her shout out.
All right.
There you go. Thank you. I was trying, Judge. Couldn't quietly point the finger, but Judge Merrill and Judge Presley have both been working diligently in increasing their juvenile presence. So I am really grateful to have them getting to know JCPC and getting to know School Justice Partnership better as the years and decades go by.
Well, I just think we all have to remember when we talk about community resources, we have so many community resources, and I've been at so many different meetings where folks do not understand, for whatever reason, because there's almost like not a clearinghouse of every resource that's available in Buncombe County. And folks get a word that you hear all the time, siloed, and they don't reach across to other folks that are in the same community doing the same things. And when you have a larger group of people that get together, that can come together for the purpose, as the gentleman was suggesting, then you actually have a tremendous amount of community support. I think of teen court. I think of all these resources that we have in Buncombe County, where it just seems like we're all doing the best that we can. We all think we're doing great, and we can all do better if we do it together. You can quote me on that. Y'all have a pleasant day.
Thank you so much.
And I will say, with the planning committee, we are very, very, very excited to see this data, and this will help us. We will definitely delve deeper into this data from this meeting, just to let everyone know. That then will help inform our priority setting as well.
And to your point, Grover, I just wanted to also note, like, and I don't know who's online now, and some may have joined, but I think all except one program were here at the very beginning for JCPC programs, but then there are also a lot of community programs, as y'all were just mentioning, that are also involved with youth. And Anna, thank you for bringing up the violence prevention team.
Yes, thank you.
Because that's a good resource too.
Does anyone have any other questions or comments for Crystal?
It was really helpful
appreciate
data, and thank you for getting FY 25. I know it was a lot, but we talked about how valuable that would be, so really appreciate that. 'Cause I got ideas already rolling, so.
I just also want to affirm, like, thank you so much for bringing both the complaint-based data which is typically shared, as well as really alongside the individual youth data, because it's such a much more rich and deep and complete picture to be able to look at those together, which.
Absolutely. That's not part of the JJDPA, but Lorraine has told me on several occasions, they want to get to the juveniles too, want to have a little more. And so I said, okay, I know what she's looking for. So I said, I'm making sure we're gonna have all of those, because sometimes you just look at one side of the picture, like you said, just what's required by the JJDPA, and not look at all the other elements, and you can see something that really is glaring. And just dealing with Buncombe County, I'm just happy and ecstatic that the involvement, because you don't get that from every district and every county, that you actually saw an issue and you actually put some work in to make a difference. And I want to thank you guys for all the work that you do, and if we can help, we're here.
Thank you so much.
We look forward to continuing to make a difference here. And I really appreciate everybody coming to the table for it. I can't say enough for the number of partners we've had and the tense conversations we'll continue to have to grow the community. So thank you, and thank you for those who've come online as well. I'm just really appreciative of that. So let's thank our presenter.
So are there any public announcements, comments before we adjourn?
It can be any public announcement, fun announcement too.
Any events coming up, any of the groups want to tell us about real quickly?
I have to share that it's a privilege and honor that UNETE is being part with our youth programs, as being a Latino organization, but serving everybody, because we are learning so much on the road, and it's also awaiting the reality for us and for our families and our students, but also the challenge in the collaboration that, yes, it needs to happen. Violence is violence and affects everybody, and we wanted to prevent it in every way possible, and the consequences, but also how intentional and careful we have to be tailoring our approach to be truly effective. And we specifically saw it in a field trip that because it was outdoors, and we have a student that is heavily involved and needs to fix a lot of things, but it was heartbreaking how even peers and classmates didn't want, for example, to be in any picture with him. Because he was already classified as bad news, or they just didn't want to be associated. So it's not just about also the ethnicity or the social status, it's also between peers, the same ethnicity, why we have to have these safe, tailored spaces where everybody feels protected and safe and valued. And so we have to find this way to collaborate, but also while we are collaborating and being one force, we have these spaces built for the specific needs, the specific situation, and not just for the student or the youth or the child, welcoming the parents also in the same level of so it's a great challenge ahead, but we are honored to be part of it. And the fun part is October 7th, we are going to have a bilingual loteria. I don't know if somebody knows what's that. It's a very traditional, fun way to play in Central American families, and we have done it before, We pair, it's like a bingo, but with
What did you call it?
drawings. Loteria? Loteria, yeah. And it's very interesting whole story, but I'm not taking your time. Just look at UNET in Facebook or Instagram, and I hope some of you can make it because it's about being together. We did it before. We pair an English speaker with a community member, only Spanish, and they have to work together to figure out because names are called in both languages. Not the fun, so that was a fun announcement. But thank you so much for building a space for the Latino community and for doing that. We appreciate that you both amazing, inspirational ladies. Yes, well, accepted. I do, yes.
Somebody behind you? Yes.
Yes. So speaking of youth, the Buncombe County Child Collaborative, and I didn't think I'd be able to do this here, so I left all the flyers in my car, but Buncombe County Child Collaborative is providing scholarships to youth-led groups, so groups that are actually led by youth with an agency or organization over them. The idea is to support any type of projects or awareness that they want to put out, focused on mental health education awareness and also building community relationships. So I can get that flyer to Hannah and get it pushed out. The application is at the end of the month, but we're kind of struggling getting applications, so we might be able to push it out a little bit early.
Is it end of September?
Yes, ma'am. So we might be able to push it out a little bit longer to make sure that youth have the time to apply for it. So.
I will share an announcement that the Youth Build program, that's collaborative, some funding through Land of Sky Regional Council and Hood Huggers Foundation and the Works project out at Camp Woodson is launching, and they are now accepting referrals for 16 through 24-year-olds who are they may have justice involvement, are not connected to school, and they'll be able to attain a GED as well as gain construction certification and experience both in the city as well as out in the rural areas as far as construction sites. And so they are actively looking for referrals right now. So I'll send that information out, make sure that folks have it. And I think both for, I've heard that they are able to take most folks. I think that there's some consideration for the highest level of felony charges, but that shouldn't be a barrier to calling them and talking with them about the individual situation.
Save the date for October 25th. More details to come, but we are planning a event for the youth to deal with opioid and polysubstance use. So right now it's looking to be at the Wesley Grant Center, 11 to 2. But I'll have more specifics, but just at least go ahead and mark your calendars to not be doing anything on that day, so that you can show up and support that.
Anyone else?
Are you adjourning us?
Judge Smith, I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you.
No,
adjourn.
I just didn't know if George was still hanging out somewhere.
Yeah.
So, sounds like we're good to go, everyone. Thank you so much. You know when our next meeting is for JCPC?
It is the third Thursday of October from 8:30 to 10 a.m.
And School Justice Partnership, we should be coming out with a date soon, hopefully, I think in November.
November, yes, and I just got a text during this meeting about it.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Weekend.